Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Amusing Panda live stream. I am joined this week by my good friend, 2019 WTC alternate and tyrant of the West Coast, Mr. Eric Eikermann, the Dick Doctor himself. How's it going, Ike?
That's right. Here I am. I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, glad to have you back on, or on for the first time, I should
Yep.
say.
On
I
for the
mean,
first time.
we've known each other so
Yeah.
long. I every time I think of a War Machine endeavor, I'm in. I'm like, I got Ike. Like, I had Ike on at some point, right? I must have.
This is it.
All right. Well, we'll have to have you on more in the future, especially once we get rules and once we get going on the
Yes,
circuit.
absolutely.
Um, but before we get into all that, what do we got for news? The USA team selection criteria are closing their final rounds for feedback. So, for anyone who is interested in that and has not gone ahead and read it, go ahead and check out the USA WTC Facebook page and give it a read through. They put a lot of thought and care into it this year, and you know, if it's something you're interested in, it's really worth giving it a read and you know, like taking advantage of the high level of transparency and interactivity we have in the process this year. Let me see. Second announcement. Very soon you guys are going to see live tournament streaming coming to this channel. So on the note of the WTC committee, Brandon and I in the next few weeks we'll be doing a pilot run for live commentated tournaments streamed from the table through our recording studio out to the public. So hoping to bring a lot more visibility into the US competitive scene and just showcase, you know, a lot of the talent and great players that we have out there and share them with the broader community. You excited to be the home base for West Coast War Machine streaming, Ike?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, awesome. Yeah, because I think the pilot is going to be your guys' tournament coming up in next week, is it?
Oh, the post rules update tournament.
Yeah.
If that's the pilot, then I won't be there. I'm unfortunately out of the
Oh,
country on
bummer.
vacation. But yeah, I'm looking forward to participating. That's for sure.
Hmm. Well, awesome. So we're gonna have more word coming on that in the very near future. But watch this space. We'll be doing a big blast out, getting people subscribed and getting them ready for live streaming from Captain Con. So keep an eye out for that.
Nice.
But with news and announcements out of the way, let's dive into our main segment since we are coming up on another WTC. And, you know, at least, you know, in my circles, I'm really excited to be getting fresh talent and fresh faces onto teams and to be getting people into applying and, you know, like really making the WTC experience accessible to more people. I think one road in, you know, a lot of people get like nervous or self-conscious, like, oh, I don't know about my resume or whatever. Um, one road in is, you know, I guess first off, like, don't doubt yourself, but the second one is put in anyways.
Mm.
You know, and even if you don't make a main team but you make an alternate, like, you're getting your name out there, you're showing up, you're being part of the team. And I think, you know, one of the big lessons for alternates is, or for people considering applying or being an alternate, is it's, you know, I think often a massive personal level up opportunity. So, you know, who better to talk about this than you, Ike, since you were alternate on our team back in 2019 and have become in the intervening years something of a metagame terror. I remember when people were playing at the Iron Gauntlet, there was a short list. Like, everybody had a short list of players they did not want to hit, and you were close to the top on everybody's list.
That's very kind of you to say. I'm happy to hear something like that. That's nice.
So tell us about yourself, where you play out of, and sort of what your history is with the game.
Yeah, so I live in San Diego. I'm born and raised in the county, and spent a lot of time up in Riverside County and Los Angeles County for schooling. I've been playing War Machine since 2014 now. So I basically picked it up on a whim, more for the hobby aspect. Was interested in learning how to paint miniatures.
Hmm.
And then sort of just fell in love with the game. As my first miniatures game ever. So it's the one I've played almost exclusively since then.
Hmm.
This was up in Los Angeles at the time. I moved back home here in 2016, and then started playing with the San Diego local meta more and more. There was a couple of guys up here in North County where I live that I played with very regularly at a local game store, and then branched out mostly across the county initially, and attended my first few Kingdom Cons up until about 2019 is when I really started trying to travel more and go to more local events um, at that time.
You, you got a fan in the chat.
Yeah, yeah, he's a pretty decent player too.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, we'll get to see more of Mike tearing up the meta as well.
Absolutely.
So here's a question. When did the San Diego meta turn into an absolute Shark Tank, and when did you start getting really seriously competitive in War Machine?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be I started the game in Los Angeles at a point in time. I think it was the very tail end of Mark II, beginnings of Mark III, when the Los Angeles meta was an absolute Shark Tank as well. And
Hmm.
every player I got a pickup game with was traveling to events at that point. So the learning curve was definitely steep. And then I moved back home, and I got a heads up, hey, there's a couple of players in San Diego that you should keep an eye out for too. And seek out games with them if you really are interested in developing your skill set and playing this game competitively and making it the thing that your main hobby,
Hmm.
something that you really want to focus on, and a game that you want to grow in. And I've always been lucky with the player base that we have locally. It's very good players, very clean players. They always want to play to the best of their ability, and when you play with people like that, you really play up to their level, and it really makes you improve as a player.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely like some steel sharpens steel, and like often depending on where you are, sometimes you have to go on the road, to really find like the next level competition. But oh, oh, excuse me. The lunch is taking its revenge. Um yeah, every now and again you'll like, either settle into like a real Shark Tank either on accident, or one will get built up around you. And it can be a really big asset both for players locally, like, looking to go deep, play a lot of games, and like really figure out where the bottom of the rabbit hole is.
Mhm,
It's also like really great for driving hype in a region,
mhm,
to have a really connected metagame where, like, the players are branching out and meeting, nearby communities, far away communities, and really connecting the network. It drives a lot of like cross regional or within your region, excitement.
absolutely.
um like yeah, I mean, I remember pre-COVID, the Bay Area was also one of those meta games, and it was a particularly exciting time to be a California player because you'd have NorCal versus SoCal,
Yeah.
like ramming into each other all the time.
Yeah, I think that's actually the first event I ever flew to was the NorCal Classic
Hmm. Hmm.
in San Jose, and I believe it was the 2018 was that first one that I decided to fly to, and it was just such an amazing experience to travel to play the game that we play, to meet other people who also traveled to get together to play this game, and
Hmm.
there's something about being in a room with 30 some odd other people that love the hobby as much as you do. You immediately have something to talk about and something to bond over, and it's just so much fun from the first minute till the last minute when you get back on the plane to go home. It's just
Yeah.
it's fun.
Hmm. Now, was that the year you came out for the classic and won it, or was that the following year?
No, I didn't win that one. I think I don't, it had to have been a later one. It's all a blur
Right.
now. It was post-COVID times.
Hmm. Well, we're reaching into the distant past of 7 years ago, but
Yeah.
you were USA alternate for our team, captained by Brandon Owens that year.
Mhm.
And yeah, so uh, let me see. I'm trying to remember even how that team got formed exactly. I think it was well, you did ATC that year, right? Like there were dual San Diego
Yes.
teams rocking
Yes.
matching jerseys.
Yes, there were two San Diego ATC teams that year. Um, and we had team names that sort of riffed off each other. Top of two, grab a brew, and uh what was our other one? Bottom of three,
Bottom of
time for
three.
a brewski. something
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, matching jerseys though. But yeah, we got ten players together. I think we pulled Orange County, LA player, a couple of like Inland Empire, LA region area guys too. But yeah, that was nice to have two SoCal teams
Mhm.
travel to that event. And then I don't know exactly when or how you guys had formed your team, but it was Kingdom Con when y'all approached me and offered me the opportunity to be an alternate for that team that year.
Right. Oh man. Yeah. So Kingdom Con would have been
April,
yeah, April or March or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
something
I
like that.
I remember my memory of the team formation, and mind you, this is like 7 years ago now, but my memory of the team formation was basically like shortly after ATC. Brandon came up to me and said, I talked to Adam. We're putting together a West Coast team. He said you're in. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I didn't understand the WTC team formation process at that point, and I think that's a sort of a common theme that's come up among competitive players over the last couple of years, not really understanding what the process is, which is part of why this committee has come together to do the work that they're doing to make that a more transparent process, which is fantastic in my opinion, and I love that they're doing that work
Right.
for us as a player base.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, because rather than being like an ephemeral target, you actually know what you're looking for and what they're actually
Yeah,
evaluating on.
exactly.
Okay, so we picked you up at Kingdom Con. Did you have any idea what sort of ride you were going to be in for when we came
Nope.
up to you and said, "You're it. You're our backup man."
Nope. I think I had met each of you and at least had a conversation with each of you, which was great at that point. But um, no, I think basically the gist of it was, hey, you like the game. Hey, we like you, and I think it would be nice to travel with you to another country to play War Machine, and you can make a full commitment to doing that. And I said, yes, I can. Again, not fully understanding exactly what that meant, but I'm glad that I did. It's one of my favorite experiences that I've had in wargaming so far.
Mhm. So what did you discover that that meant after you said yes?
Well, it was important to understand exactly what the role of the alternate player was. You're there to fill in case of an emergency, and take over that fifth spot and have a set of lists that you have practiced and are competent with, and to understand your role in the team and to understand what your matchups will be like, just like you're one of those five on the team. You just have to put in the work and be present and be part of that team.
Oh, my camera's crap in the bed.
Uh-oh.
We're back. We're back. Uh okay, yeah. So, one of the things that you know, there's a lot that can go on in an alternate in the background for an alternate, and a lot that an alternate contributes in the background. One of which is strategy for what what lists you're bringing, what factions you're playing. I believe that year you were on Crucible Guard, right?
Yeah, I was playing Crucible Guard competitively that year. Brandon was also playing Crucible Guard competitively, so that made our pair selection sort of interesting, because we couldn't double
Right.
up. So he took the caster pair that was strongest, obviously, the one that he had been playing all year and was planning on playing in the event. And then I had an alternate pair that I needed to be kind of fluent with, just in
Mhm.
case, because I had to be able to take the place of any of the other teammates and still not double up with him.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, which can be really challenging in a limited faction, especially, when periodically there is like an optimal pair for the faction.
Hmm.
Um yeah, how so I want to segue into another aspect, which is, a lot of people think of WTC as this one big event.
Hmm.
But what they may not realize is that there's a large run up period to it. Which is, the team formation, sussing out what factions you're going to play, doing metagame evaluation, and then playing in as many events as possible and deliberately seeking out that steel sharpens steel kind of thing. Was 2019. So all this is by way of saying, when you say yes to a WTC team or an alternate slot, it's more than just the one weekend. It's typically like you're gonna get on a plane a bunch of times with us this year and go play War Machine, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So,
what
you
was
know,
that year like for you?
I think, looking back, I didn't travel nearly as much as you all did as a team. There were several team events that you all tried to get to together and play together. But I tried to make it out to as many things as I could. And
Hmm.
that was kind of a shock for me, the number of times that you all committed to traveling to practice together. It wasn't necessarily always team events. You would play singles events too, but the opportunity to be at an event together to discuss strategy in between rounds, to process and analyze games in real time with the memory fresh, what was, I think, very, invaluable. um and then, it's also a lot of, team chat on the sidelines. I don't even remember what platform we used at the time, but a lot of matchup discussion, continuously running in the background. Hey, what do you think about this list into this pair? What should be my primary goal in this matchup? Is that something that I should be dodging, etc. So
Hmm.
uh,
Up to that point, was that the most travel intensive year you'd had for War Machine?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd gone mostly to West Coast events at that point, and only flown to a handful, mostly local events up
Hmm.
until then though.
Mhm. Yeah, so I definitely remember you were at the NorCal Classic. And did you win that one, or were you top tables at that one?
I didn't win that one. I don't remember exactly what the final standings were, but I didn't win. That's for sure.
Mhm. I definitely remember that, like, even then that was like an Ike's a terror tournament. Like, again, you were, even as the team all high on people's dodge list, because you'd been putting in the reps and putting in the work. For Actually, something, because this was a factor for both oh my god, cat. This was a factor for both of us that year. That in 2019, it was Brandon on Crucible Guard, I was on Scorn, Aaron was on Convergence, Adam was
Yep.
on Circle, and we
Yep.
had Tucker
Tucker.
on
Ret.
Retribution.
Yep.
And then you were alternate in on Crucible Guard. And one of the things that
Hmm.
showed up, like, Adam, Aaron, and Tucker had sort of like wide open metagame field, like, play essentially what you want to play. But I feel like for both of us, in the run up to WTC that year, a lot of our tournament season preparation was based around what does the team need, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So like Brandon was on, I think it was like Silvestro, and were you guys having a custody battle over Locke that year? Is that what it was?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he ended up on Silvestro Lock. I don't think he was playing the Baldwin Ass Mountain sort of
Right.
paradigm at that point. I don't think he had, quote unquote, discovered it at that
Mhm.
point.
Well, they also hadn't been
Locke
eroded
still,
into being good yet.
right, and Locke still did some very interesting things at the time that he liked. But I think it was
Mhm.
mostly a Silvestro mainline sort of plan,
Mhm.
which left me playing. It must have been Baldwin. The thing is that in the events that I traveled to, I ended up playing the same pair that he was playing.
Oh, sure.
In the solo event that I played, I played the same pair because that was the one that we talked about the most. It was the one that I understood the most as well.
Mhm.
But I had an alternate set ready to go.
Mhm. How did you manage practice for the two sets of lists? Obviously, you're going to a tournament and you're playing that, and then, like, local game nights, are you just grinding out your, like, okay, somebody breaks a leg, I got to step in,
Mhm.
grinding out that pair in your off
Mhm.
time?
I just tried to cycle through as many different matchups as I could, really.
Mhm.
I sort of relied on the fact that Brandon understood the Silvestro lock pair very, very well. And if, worst case scenario, if I ended up having to take his position and he could still talk, he'd be able to coach me through and give me some tips about what my expectations were any given matchup. But yeah, I tried to play as many of them as many times as I could, really.
Mhm.
Yeah, Mike is mentioning it. I do think it was McKay and Baldwin. I do remember playing McKay at the NorCal Classic that year. So I think that is the pair that I was on at that point.
Right, yeah. Yeah, well, it's interesting, when there are strategic concessions, because it's funny that, you sort of compensated in volume just to, like, push through, because I was definitely like, um oh god, Scorn took a nerf midway through that year, and I had to, or it was Theme Forces that changed. I had to change my pair partway through the year.
Was it the
But
Immortal theme that changed that year?
it was Immortals, and it was the Beast one. Because I
Mm,
was playing Zadesh, and then the Zadesh list got nerfed out of
mm,
relevancy, and then I switched to Makeda, and I was Makeda Exalted, and I
mhm,
was
mhm,
desperately looking for a fixer list to, like, come in and deal with some stuff. But for me, it was a wild year because, like, me playing Scorn, and particularly playing the kinds of Scorn archetypes I was playing, were like, this is what the team needs. This covers, a broad suite of matchups. you're a generalist for us. You're solving things like Grimkin and trolls that none of us want to see. The trade-off is you virtually auto lose to Crucible Guard.
Yeah, it sure fell over to a few very specific things.
Yeah, yeah. They kept me out of Crucible Guard all weekend at the WTC, but
Yeah,
you know, sometimes you have to make trade-offs in the team environment that may affect your individual year.
yeah.
So for you it was, play what was effective in the individual tournaments and then go back and grind games. What were you getting, like, ballpark for games per week to stay both competitive generally and practiced with your backup pair?
I at that point I was trying to play at least twice a week, I would say. We had a local store game night that I would try to make every week if I could,
Hmm.
work allowing, and then I tried to set up one on a weekend too if I could. Um,
Hmm.
and that feels doable. It's certainly not the upper limit of what I could get in a week, but much more than that can be a little bit hard to coordinate.
Hmm. Well, it's
Uh,
interesting. Like, oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, War Table has helped quite a bit though in getting up the a realistic number of reps that I can get done in a week now though. So
Hmm.
if I were to do it again, I would aim a little bit higher than that currently for sure.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting, because, like, uh, five games per week is like, you're looking at travel time and downtime and talking and setup and tear down. You are probably looking at like a part-time job that you're stapling on top of your real life job.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
taking some spare time and getting war table games has made that much easier.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And it's not, if you're really trying to get something out of those reps too, you really can't phone it in. You have to be engaged with it. So,
right, yeah.
if you're coming into it exhausted from a day of work, then you might as well not play it in reality, if you're not going to get anything real out of it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, what would you look for in like shooting for quality over quantity, and like how would you approach turning the games that you can get every week into really meaningful games?
A thing that I've always done with my local frequent players that I play with that I really like is, we don't typically make early assassination runs. We will draw attention to it and talk about it, and then often abandon that plan for an attrition focused plan
Mhm.
because in my mind at least, playing the game out for several more turns to see how the attrition will turn out, how the scenario will turn out, gives me a lot more feedback about how my list is functioning at any given time rather than, I have a 50, 60, 70% run here that seems reasonable.
Right.
We can take some time to recognize that that's the case. We can even do the dice rolls now if you want, but let's
Mhm.
keep playing the game and take advantage of these 2.5, 3 hours that we set aside to see how the game turns out.
Right. Yeah. So like taking a trusted player that is not like, neither you're trying to ego trip over each other. You're just like, let's play this game all the way down. And, rather than re-rack or whatever, like we'll correct and then we'll like play through because it's important to see how this entire game goes. Not just the gotcha or the fast blitz. Like,
Yeah.
let's see what this, like, every time we go to this matchup, let's see what it looks like when it goes to maturity. Yeah, that's so I have a slight digression here. Something producer Keith said to me like a month or so ago. Because we're reaching back in time, but pulling your experience forward. Something Keith said to me a while ago that I've just been ruminating on is that attrition, uh attrition, I'm going to paraphrase here, but attrition as a game plan is sort of a trap. It's a gauntlet that you need to pass through in order to, win the game on scenario, and reach maturity in the full game. But that if you're chasing attrition, it can lead to you getting led around by the nose rather than, prioritizing objective table states or objective win states. What do you think about that one? Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I think there's certainly some truth to that, in that just being up on model count alone is not a clear picture of what's happening in a game, right?
Hmm.
I think every one of us has probably logged a game on Longshanks that, that says 6 to 3, 10 army points to 70 army points destroyed, something
Right. Yeah.
ridiculous like that.
Hmm.
And you think back and you say, well, okay, I won this game because I was in the dominant scenario position, right?
Hmm.
And my opponent didn't recognize that. They rolled dice and killed models, but they didn't get
Hmm.
the work done that they needed to get done at a certain point in the game. And yeah, I think that is probably one of, if not the skill that holds people back in the middling stage of their development as a player, right? Initially, it's, just understanding basic positioning and piece trading and, clock management, if that's where you're starting. But at some point, you need to understand um, that entire board state all at once, and that's what's my clock advantage, what's my position advantage, what's my attrition and scenario advantage, all wrapped up into one, right? and
Right.
and and, and, and can I see that as a snapshot, and make course corrections as needed from that?
Yeah, yeah. And we're both sort of in the church of Brandon. The clock very much is a resource. Jay
Absolutely.
Beatnik chiming in here, and chasing attrition will eat up your clock. Sometimes it's about choosing the contesting at the objective and pushing another turn.
I don't know. There's a couple of, one local player that I'm thinking of specifically, who's has made leaps and bounds in the last 2 to 3 years that I've been playing with him. But we've had a number of conversations where I've said, that turn, why did you make these attacks? They they just did not need to happen. And if you hadn't made those attacks, then you probably would have won, because you're so much farther ahead on clock than I am, and
Mhm.
you're in a dominant position that, those models can just be where they are. They don't need to do anything. And
Right.
it's hard for some players to recognize that they don't have to do stuff all the time. That was
Mhm.
actually something that I struggled with a lot in the 2019 2020 time of my playing. Was I felt like I had to do things with every single model every turn, and sometimes, even sometimes that meant like I'll run a unit to a place, and I'd have to think back and say, well, why did I do that? That doesn't make any sense. I just felt like I needed to touch all the models and put them somewhere new. If I
Right.
left the model in a spot, I had failed that model somehow. But, sometimes that's the answer. Sometimes that's exactly what you need to do.
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes they don't get to make attacks, and sometimes they're perfectly happy exactly where they are. They
Hmm.
don't need to move. You put them there for a reason, and that reason persists.
Exactly.
Yeah, when did that start lighten up for you as like an area of focus where you're seeing yourself like, I touched the model just to touch it. Why am I doing this?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, that year when I just really ramped up the amount that I was playing, and
Mhm.
how much I was talking through game plan with other players that had more experience than I had, just interacting with people more regularly, and talking through game plans. Really, they'll ask you questions about what you did on a turn, right? We'll
Right.
we'll look through we'll look through game pictures, board states, and say, at the end of this turn, I ended up here. And then you get to answer all the questions. Well, why did you do this? What was your thought process here? And then,
Hmm.
sometimes the answer is, I don't know. I don't know why I did that.
Hmm.
And then that's that self-reflection where you go, okay, well, somebody else is recognizing that that was a problem. So maybe I need to start thinking a little more critically about each of these turns and activations myself. And that really helped me quite a bit.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, for me, I remember like, oh God, I think it was the classic or something. It was an event late in the year, and I remember you definitely came up to me at one point and said,
Mm.
"Why did you do this instead of like basically instead of nothing?" And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I'm like, because I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, I think every player has games like that. I think I can almost pinpoint in every single game that I play a moment where I go, well, that was really kind of dumb, actually. I don't know why I thought that that was a thing that I should do, but I mean, that's why we play this game. I think if it were easy to solve, then we'd probably all get bored of it pretty fast.
Hmm. And we got Jay Beatnick in here doing game film or pictures and then talking them over with other players helps get a lot of good feedback. Oh,
Absolutely.
oh no, cat. I have to be wary of him stepping on the keyboard of the laptop I have right next to my streaming setup. I also have a European style keyboard. There's like a power and sleep button on there, so I have to like
Oh, yeah.
grab him anytime he's in the neighborhood of it.
High danger.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, so there's a couple of like branching points which I think are really interesting here. One of which is, like you say, increased face time, both with your teammates, and increased face time as a result of traveling more. You get more familiar with players, and like build up rapport, and like maybe run into some people over and over again, and start to be able to push a matchup, or like oh my god, cat, he's really in a mood tonight. um Push the conversation about the game, particularly in like specific implementation, a long ways.
Hmm. Hmm.
um and another thing that's in the like that also goes on with that is like you mentioned, at the start, is like, I don't know, we've got like a Facebook group, or like, God, we're using like Group Me back in the day. I haven't
It might have
even.
even been Slack. I
Oh yeah, that's right. We had a team Slack that year.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, yeah. And then Discord over the pandemic basically displaced everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I Discord is a godsend. I every it seems like every local meta has a Discord at this point.
Hmm.
And I highly recommend getting into as many of them as you can. There's a lot of cross pollination between each different area, but you're gonna find players unique to each one of those local discords as well, and there's always conversation going on somewhere. Um, there's usually some interesting conversation. It's nice to hear what other people think of the game state and think of models,
Hmm.
specifically. It's kind of fun right now to watch as these spoilers leak out, to see how people react to the changes, because it gives an idea of the context with which other people are viewing the game state, essentially, which is fun. And I think that's the same thing that you get when you travel outside of your local area. It's important to get exposure to um, other styles of play, other and I don't even just mean in like list building and how somebody might unpack their army, or the order of operations that they might perform their turn in, but the way that other people communicate during a game, the way that they use their proxy bases, their measuring tools, the way that they communicate with you about dice math, um, about what spells they've put out at any certain time, what their their caster's focus stack is, where their focus stack is. All of these things um, are different from player to player, and you'll see some sort of like regional differences as well, just about the way that people communicate and interact while playing the game. And I think
Right.
you've experienced this too. But when you travel to across the Atlantic to Europe to play the game, that's a whole nother level of list building, play style, etc.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, particularly seeing people play differently and like being prepared for, for variance versus like your locals. And then like, and, everybody locally is probably mostly on the same page to
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
intra regionally, like probably mostly pretty similar to like, Clash of the Different Coasts. Like now we're getting quite different
Hmm.
to yeah, playing internationally. Having gone through that, was there anything that particularly surprised you about going over to, it was Belgium that year, and playing in solo masters in what you experienced in terms of table manner, style of play, etc.?
I I had a great time playing in the Solo Masters event. I had five fantastic games. I wouldn't change anything about any one of them. I would say that the thing that surprised me the most was how deliberate the Europeans are with their communication, and I think that probably, at least in part, comes from the fact that we're all playing in English,
Hmm.
and for at least not a small portion of them, that's their second language, so they're very precise in the way that they communicate with you. I think a lot of American players will use jargon and slang when they play the game, and a lot of the colloquialisms that have developed for the game are understood just because they've been taken on across the country, and they perpetuate in the online space as well. So, and then you can also sort of just understand meaning. You can infer meaning from some of these things. But if you use slang terminology or colloquialisms with somebody else who's not super familiar with the language, they're not going to understand what you're saying, and they're gonna stop you and ask you questions. What did you mean when you just said that? Can you please clarify? And then you just have to realize, okay, I need to be very deliberate with how I'm communicating with my play partner right now.
Hmm.
And that was the thing that it surprised me the most. It was not an unpleasant thing to deal with. It was just interesting and new.
Hmm. Is that something you found has stuck with you since then, coming out of that experience?
Yeah, luckily, again, I have some frequent play partners that are very deliberate in the way that they communicate while they're playing, and I've tried very hard to make that a part of how I play the game as well.
Hmm. Hmm. That's man, it's really funny, like the stuff you pick up from others, and like it's really important to curate it and make sure it's good stuff.
Yeah, you
Um
can certainly pick up some bad habits too.
yeah, yeah. I've definitely picked up slop secondhand and given slop secondhand. So, yeah, that culture is important, and, maintaining standards, like one of the best things you can do for a local meta is like make sure they're playing, at the level they want to, and that others would want them to.
Mhm.
Um let me see. So, one of the big things is that ongoing continuing conversation. Obviously, when you're on a team, you've all got teammates, you're all invested in one another, and there's going to be like constant, like basically constant background in the run up to the big team tournament. What what have you found about, like, what have you how to say this? So you're on a lot of discords when creating a really, like, when creating a group or a community that is supportive and developing you toward your goals effectively, and you're helping them develop effectively, what do you look for? And, like, if you were to look at, the case of someone preparing to apply to the WTC for the first time, or wanting to assemble a resume and hit all those benchmarks that the committee's looking for, what would you encourage them to look for in putting together that, like, that community that's really going to be supportive of growth?
Well, I think it sort of depends on what stage in your War Machine career you're at, I guess. If you're very new to the game, I think you're going to still want to stay pretty local, and then maybe first start to branch out into some of these war table leagues. I think that's a really good place to start. You don't have to travel for one. I really enjoy traveling to play this game, but it's a big hurdle for some people to actually do that,
Hmm.
from a time commitment and a financial commitment. But these online Discord leagues or War Table Flash Discord leagues are easy to access, and they run frequently. You usually get a week's worth of time to coordinate your game with the person that you're paired up with. So um, the time pressure is not quite that bad, actually. Um, the exposure you get just from being in those communities and talking with the other players in those communities, and then the game reps that you get, that's a great place to start. And then from there, I think you're going to want to try to travel as much locally as you can. Find out what qualifiers take place in your region. Plan for them ahead of time, and set it as a personal goal to attend, and then practice with a goal in mind. I'm going to go to this event and I'm going to play this pair until I go there, and I'm going to
Hmm.
be fluent with that pair, and I'm going to see how I do with it. Um, and then from there, I think it's just, marginal steps and expanding your net, as you feel comfortable doing that. And um, for me personally, I try to travel at least a couple of times a year to a couple of different conventions. I try to target the ones that I've either enjoyed in the past, or something that I haven't been to before. I haven't been to Adepticon yet, so I'm going to attend that this year. I
Hmm.
went to Bokor last year for the first time, and that was an incredible experience. I would love to go back again, but it's a little bit difficult to travel to the East Coast for a War Machine event for me.
Right.
That
Yeah.
might just logistically not be something that's available to me, at least not every year. But I've done it. I know that I enjoyed it, and I would like to do it again at some point in the future. So it really just does take some planning, um, and figuring out what you want to get out of your travel and exposure for the year, and then coming up with a plan on how
Hmm.
to do that, and then talking to other people in these online spaces who've done it before you, and been at that stage of their career, what their experience was like.
Hmm. Yeah, because getting involved in the leagues, among other things, very low barrier to entry.
Hmm.
But there are a lot of serious tournament regulars that are playing in those leagues. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
getting a game against some of America, or even the world's, oh, excuse me, top talent has never been easier.
Yeah.
Um, there is something for underlying game math too. um but yeah, that doing that can build up, like, your like, sort of your domain of advisors and your contacts, especially for people playing the same faction as you or whatever, very, very
Hmm.
quickly.
Hmm.
But there's, like, some underlying games per year math where, like, when you say 2 games a week, it doesn't necessarily sound like a ton, but, like, if you do the math, if you're playing one game every week, so that's 52 weeknight games, and then you play, say, one 4 round tournament every month. You're actually at 100 games a year. If you staple on a second in-person game every week, and every other, come on, camera. um and every other month you're traveling to a tournament with maybe a 5 round Saturday, 3 round finals Sunday. um you know that's another 100 games a year. So like 2 games a week, one con every 2 months, and one local tournament every month. You're at 200 games.
Mhm.
Staple on one online league, like playing a game a week, you're at about 250 games a year. Staple on a second, you're at 300.
Mhm.
Getting like elite levels of practice every year is like, it's actually quite doable, if you just block out time to make it part of your life.
Mhm.
And if you're prepping for WTC, or you're really getting yourself ready and in fighting shape, and posting results to be selected for WTC, like, is actually more doable than you might think. um
Yeah, I think the big one for if if you have in mind that you want to apply for a WTC spot, we're going to see very quickly what the selection criteria is when the applications open up here in a couple weeks. But that it tells you, it's a checklist, and if you want to have a strong application, then you just need to go through it and say, what do I need to do so that next year I can check boxes?
hmm hmm
And a lot of that is identifying these qualifier events and then making a plan to attend a handful of those events.
hmm Well, yeah, let's pivot into that, into talking about riding the US circuit. So like, I know, um you know around 2011, 2012 was like when I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area. And before that, it had always been like local game stores and local tournaments and stuff like that. And I remember, went to the Bay Area, did some like journeyman leagues, local tournaments, went out and played with the San Francisco guys. And then there was a Frontline Gaming like major tournament like an hour away.
Mhm.
And me and some of my local buddies like went up to that. Oh, excuse me. Man, that Chipotle really not doing me any favors. um we went up to this Frontline Gaming tournament, and it was like a multi-day thing, and I'm like, this is awesome. I
Yeah,
love this. I want to do more of this.
yeah.
And then like, I think I go to like Lock and Load or something the next year, and I like meet some people and start listening to War Machine podcasts. I'm like, wait, there's actually like more tournaments than this out there. There's an actual, like, people have put together a circuit of tournaments all over the country. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
man, this is
yeah.
awesome. And I felt like I was, maybe living under a rock, because I probably was for a long, long time. But it was like a revelation discovering, that there was this grand wide world of competitive play and developing excellence like out there. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, how did you first get keyed into that world?
Very, very similar sequence of events, I think, just sort of in the Southern California half. The first big con I went to was Kingdom Con, one that's unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. But that was my first exposure to any gaming convention, really. I hadn't attended one yet. So I similar experience. I walked in through the door and immediately saw a room filled with people that were excited about playing miniatures games, not just War Machine, but um, you know, Privateer Press is here and they brought new models and we're going to see the cards for the first time and everybody's excited at the same time. And this event's going to be 2 days, and look at how many players there are, look at all these nicely painted armies, and oh, there's somebody that I can immediately start talking to about my army. um,
Hmm.
and we can have a long conversation about tips, tricks, and tactics, and it's just so much fun. Yeah, so Kingdom Con was my first exposure, and then from there I think I went to LVO, and then traveled to NorCal events initially. I never actually made it out to Phoenix. That was always on my list of places that I wanted to try to get to, but I didn't get there. I got to Rocky Mountain Rumble early, so I sort of just crept out from my home base further and further over time. But
Hmm.
say, like, just like you described, I kept finding more and more depth um, to the competitive side of the game. And a lot of that exposure came when I talk to people. They say, are you going to go to Lock and Load this year? And I go, well, I don't know what Lock and Load is, or Warfare Weekend, or I don't know what that is, tell me more about that. Um a lot of word of mouth exposure and explanation at that point.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always funny, like, because if you've been around in the game nationally for a long time, it is very easy to forget that at one point you didn't know the national scene
Yeah.
existed.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so it's interesting that it came through word of mouth for you. For me, it did, like, it for me, it did come through podcasts, particularly like listening to John Damaris back on Muse on Minis back in the day. um so for people who don't know what's out there, how would you what would you describe the US tournament circuit as? And like how would you explain it to someone who's new to the game or new to competition, has never heard of it, and this might be right up their alley?
um I For me, the um it's sort of about these Iron Gauntlet qualifier events that pop up across the country during a competitive year that lead up to the Iron Gauntlet. Um, and you can find all sorts of sizes of events that are qualifiers, from a 12 to 16 person steamroller that is a qualifier at your local game store, to a regional event, to one of these more nationally recognized events like your Adepticon. So
Mhm.
it really, it sort of depends on what you're looking for, but you can tap into it at any one of those levels, and there's always something going on. We're in a little bit of a lull right now before the rules update, which
Right.
traditionally happens between the Iron Gauntlet and then the end of the year into the new year. But as soon as the rules update, things are going to start ramping up again, and there's already several qualifiers that are imminently approaching, that are they're listed. You just have to go find them and register for them.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the Iron Gauntlet, we got Jay Beatnik, Adepticon, LVO, Rocky Rumble, Gen Con, Lock and Load, Nova, and a few others, I think. So actually, if anyone watching this, if you go to the description for this live stream, there should be in there a link to the Longshanks event registry, specifically for US Iron Gauntlet, or North America Iron Gauntlet 2026. Confusingly, there is a European one, I think, that's 2027 already. So don't get those mixed up unless you get a lot of frequent flyer miles.
Mm.
But Yeah, so it used to be, back in the day, there wasn't really a consolidated resource for this in many places, so like not easy to find if you were uninitiated. Nowadays, most this is definitely some like, some observer bias, but like most meta games I've been in or around have adopted Longshanks as their standard like tournament planning, round matchmaking. It does the SOS for you, all this stuff. So I feel like the technology consolidation has gotten better for that. Back in the day, though, in many cases, like back when it was the War Machine Weekend Invitational and then Privateer Press's Iron Gauntlet that they would run at Lock and Load, which was separate from Warfare
Right.
Weekend at the time,
Right.
and now they've
Right.
merged. You had to go to like Facebook posts, like months old Privateer Press blogs. Like it could be a bit of an endeavor even discovering that this whole circuit thing existed.
Yeah, I absolutely. It was a struggle then. It's still not the clearest it could be now either, but
Mhm.
it's getting better. It's getting a lot better, and I think there are enough people who know what's out there that if you just popped into any Discord and said, "Hey, can somebody please tell me like what's coming up and what I might be able to target in this month," somebody will pop in and say, "This is happening in this state on this month, and you could make it." I guarantee you, you will get that information.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's man, cultivating a wealth of local sources is super useful for that. Especially when I know, for instance, the Cascade Clash Masters is approved for the Iron Gauntlet, but
Exactly.
it
Exactly.
isn't on the thing yet. Actually, and there's another interesting phenomenon too, because I'm just looking at Longshanks and like, oh, I do see it's tagged on the Cascadia Championship Series. So these are in many cases, unless you have one going on in your region, often more obscure than the national circuit, which is local or regional circuits.
Mhm.
So was it the LA area that had Store Wars, or am I misremembering that?
I I believe it was that. I think that's a
Mhm.
little bit before my time, though.
Okay, yeah, because I remember in Mark II there was some sort of like regional. I think it was mostly LA regional. I believe it was Store Wars, and then there was like the Intermountain Cup, which was
That was the
part.
Idaho area, right?
Yeah, there was like Idaho, Utah, like
Mhm. Mhm.
they had a local circuit that was going on.
Mhm.
Um, there was King of Coins. I don't remember where that was. I want to say it was East Coast. I even went to one, the qualifier. I think it was the first post-pandemic qualifier. At least I did, was up in Indianapolis, and it was an upper Midwest, like Michigan, Indianapolis, that region, set of tournaments that they were running. Oh, Stephen Williams. There was one in the DC, Maryland area for a few years around 2016. Nice. Yeah, so it's a treasure to see these things come up, but like you don't always know that they're there, and they're often like camouflaged in plain sight.
Mhm.
But what we have out here, or out here broadly, generously, is the Cascadia Championship Series that
Mhm.
runs basically anywhere that the Cascade Mountains touch. So that'd be British Columbia, Oregon, Washington, and while California has Cascades in it, I don't know that we've had a Cascadia qualifier out there.
I don't
Um,
think
but
so.
but the beautiful thing about regional tournament circuits is like, one, the level of competition you are finding is often your proximate arm of the national competitive circuit.
Yep.
And two, the qualifiers will often travel together. So like, I'm looking at right now the Cascade Clash Masters in Bellingham, Washington is going to be both Iron Gauntlet and Cascadia. And then, the next month, or no, holy crap, the next week, Broken Coast Barrage in British Columbia is both Iron Gauntlet and Cascadia.
Mhm. Mhm.
um man, you can get a lot of proficiency like by going to these, because you are often running into the same groups of people.
Hmm.
Have you done much of the regional circuits?
Um, no, I haven't really. I've been meaning to get up to the Pacific Northwest to do some of that Cascadia, so I just haven't been able to yet.
Hmm. Well, we're gonna have Dragon's Fury again this year, and
Yep.
yeah, getting to Bellingham, Washington is hard. Let me just say
Yeah.
that.
I've heard
Um,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially since Southwest stopped flying directly into there. Like basically now you're just on Allegiant or nothing.
Yeah.
Like usually the best way up there is like fly to Seattle, rent a car, or ride up with somebody.
Yeah, I think Sean recommended flying into Vancouver and then
Mm.
coming down is actually a reasonable thing you can do too, I think.
Yeah, I guess it's actually technically a shorter distance.
Yeah.
Um, I just having to having to interact with customs and border like multiple times on a trip is like, mm,
It's just a different set of problems.
yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, so we've sort of, oh, we got Jay Beatnick in here. Our local St. Louis circuit is Chicago, Wisconsin, Memphis, Arkansas, Kentucky, Indiana.
That's big.
Yeah, that's a fantastically large region for a regional circuit. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely.
Um, yeah, especially with how many qualifiers Wisconsin has this year. Who, buddy? Yeah, so I think we've sort of described what the circuit is. Well, I guess we should mention, there are finals, to this whole thing. Uh, Let me see. I'm trying to remember. There was a certain inflection point, and it's hard to differentiate too, because there was old Iron Gauntlet and old War Machine Weekend Invitational, and then Warfare Weekend Invitational. Um, whoa! Now that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Oh my God, Cat. We got Mark from San Francisco. Oh man, Mark is one of my guys from way back in the day. Damn, glad to see you, buddy. Thanks for hopping on. Damn, everybody's coming back to the game. This is awesome.
It's very exciting. A lot of people coming back. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really amazing. It's really amazing how much of like the metagame is we did it, chat. We summoned from the past. Yeah, it's amazing like how much of the game now, after like the Mark III, I sometimes in my head refer to it as the dying times.
Hmm.
But how many people are like the largest demographics I see basically anywhere I travel are new players or returning Mark II players, which feels awesome.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Shoot, I got totally derailed. Super glad you're back playing in San Rafael, Mark.
That's exciting.
Um, yeah. Oh man, we're gonna have to have you out at the NorCal Classic later this year. Speaking of tournament circuits, I believe it should be coming back for another round.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, I think I lost my place. So the circuits, all end in, year end finals somewhere.
Right.
For there's so many old circuits. Do you want to talk to us about how how the Iron Gauntlet circuit works now
Yeah.
as a consolidated thing, as opposed to the three very confusing things it was in the past?
Yeah, and this is it might not even be perfectly clarified for me yet because of how complicated it's been in the past. But um, this last Gauntlet qualifier in the middle of November happened at Warfare Weekend, which is the convention that it happened at, but it was Lock and Load at Warfare Weekend, which is just the name of the War Machine event, and it was the Iron Gauntlet. So if you qualified, then you earned a spot in the field of 32. A couple of those spots were held for the previous year's winner, and then a couple of spots are held for the winners or top placers of the last chance qualifier event that takes place at that tournament, that event. So the way that you qualify, the way that the rankings are determined is that anytime you play in an Iron Gauntlet qualifier event, if you have a placement that earns you some sort of points, um, then you'll generate points towards qualifying towards the finals. And at the end of the year, they take the top three points totals that you earned from three separate events. So if you attend 10 events and you place well in all 10 of them, they're still only going to take the three best showings that you had. And the number of points that you earn for each of those events that you attend is determined by the number of players in the event and what your final placement was. So if you do very well at a large tournament, you're going to get more points than if you finish first at a 12-man local qualifying event. But um, it only takes three, and then you've got a solid points total, and you're at least on the board, right? And it's something that is tracked over time throughout the year, and we didn't get quite as many updates as some people would have liked last year in real time,
Right.
but they publish sort of the standings a couple of times in maybe a month or two leading up to the event, and then if you are in that top 32, then you qualify for a spot.
Yeah, man, the updates this past year. I remember being in a circus bar, like after day one of the LVO, like writing down points on a napkin,
Yeah.
like trying to figure out, like, okay, I'm at this many points, which means I need to place this. I have no idea where I stand nationally. But they eventually got the scores out to us, and those are much more publicly available, or at least we are anticipating much more public visibility this year.
Mhm, mhm,
And these are if you look at the WTC selection criteria, these qualifier events are what they describe in the committee's language as pinnacle events. Or am I having it backwards? Anyways, there's essentially both qualifiers that are like, like of some national or regional renown, are also considered for WTC applications. And then so are all these, like the national circuit with the Iron Gauntlet, and things like Cascadia, or your regional circuits.
mhm.
So it's all sort of like, traveling and participating in all these things is like sort of feeding one beast for competitive ambition. I want to
Mhm,
make it to the WTC. I want
mhm,
to make it to the top of the invitational. How do you do that thing? You travel the circuit.
mhm, mhm. And you
um
go to events, and you notice if you bring up the WTC application, there are separate categories for number of events attended and how well you placed at each of those events. So it's not only important that you're placing, but it's also important that you're attending a number of events in a year. It boosts your score from both ends. So it's important. You can't just go to the one and finish first. It's probably not going to boost up your point score far enough to get into consideration.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, usually one event is not enough to rest your laurels on. And philosophically, like the way the Iron Gauntlet, or back when it was a War Machine, back when it was the War Machine Weekend Invitational, it was often, there were 16 or 32 qualifiers around the country, and to qualify you had to win one.
Right.
And then
Yeah,
there were
I remember
alternate
those days. Yeah.
qualifiers where they'd get
Yeah.
you'd get pulled from if somebody won multiple. But now we're sort of in the era of NASCAR scoring, and
Mm.
both the Iron Gauntlet Invitational and the WTC sort of take the same perspective from on it, which is that, like, that number of games math, and like really really refining your game over time, and showing consistency of trajectory, and like demonstrating that you essentially have the skill to go the distance, and like it ain't a fluke. This is a consistent player, um which I think is great. But sorry, lunch is really hitting me bad. um but so that's, I mean, I guess we've covered what is the circuit. uh if you had to give like big reasons why travel the circuit, why go to all this expense and effort, and like, oh gosh, I got to figure out how to get out to Fort Worth, Texas, or out to Bellingham, Washington, or wherever it is. What's available out of all of this.
For me, it's fun. That's the bottom line. I mean, if you're not gonna have fun doing it, then you probably shouldn't do it. That's number one. But there's something really satisfying about traveling to do a thing. This is my hobby. This is what I like to do, and I'm gonna travel to do it. It just kind of elevates it in my mind, at least, to this next level. That's a thing that I do. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
um there's that aspect of it, but one of the biggest benefits is meeting the people.
Right.
Like I said before, you get dropped into a room where you can immediately hold an interesting conversation with everyone there, because you have this shared common interest. And some people struggle to make meaningful relationships with people, or have something to talk about, and don't love small talk. I know I certainly fall into that category. um, so being able to travel and immediately interact with people meaningfully and in a way that I enjoy, where I can walk away from and say that was really pleasurable, has been very important for my social well-being in the last
Right.
decade. Um, that's number two. And then we talked about a little bit about this before, is just branching out of your local play group and experiencing play style and different understanding of the game, that you can find in different regions.
Hmm. Oh, excuse me. I love what you said about you know like you gotta be having fun.
Yeah.
There's definitely player burnout, which I think could very well be a future episode.
Yeah.
um but you and I had both had that experience of, like, you go to like Kingdom Con, or the tournament I went to up in Antioch, and like, this is awesome.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I
you know
usually return energized for the game from these things. And
Mhm.
right before traveling to this last warfare weekend slash lock and load, Iron Gauntlet, I was at a little bit of a low point in the game for myself. I hadn't played much in the month leading up to that. Um Yeah, and you go through these periods where maybe your work schedule is a little bit harder, or you have personal or family things that come up, or medical things that come up, and you have to take a small step back. But traveling to these big events really lights the fire again, for me. And I came back excited to see what the new year was going to be, ready to commit to playing the game at a high level again for the next year.
Mhm. It's funny that you mentioned that because I think I had a really similar experience as well. The first time I went to WTC in 2017, I played awful. My results were super bad. I went 1-5, like, um, and I was up in my own head about it for a long time, like really beating
Hmm.
myself up about it. And I had a lot of life things come up in the time, but like, that WTC was, aside from like the occasional local game night, basically the last thing I did for like, 6 months War Machine time. And I was sort of down on myself and down on the game. And then, I just happened to like, cheap airline tickets, like go down to Kingdom Con, like, you know what, we'll give it a shot, break out the old minis and see how this goes. And I had an amazing time. I came out of that Kingdom Con like from being like some of the most down I'd ever been about myself playing the game, straight back to like, man, this is awesome. And the people are great. And like, I'm having fun again,
Yeah, absolutely.
like,
I think that sort of that brings up one other point that I wanted to mention earlier, that if you're going to start traveling, this sort of goes along with the make sure you're going to have fun aspect, but you need to temper your expectations, because
mhm,
I'll never forget, like, that first time I flew, to play War Machine, um, and I didn't perform very well. My first thought was, well, that was a waste of a vacation time and a plane ticket and a hotel stay.
mhm,
But it's really not the case. You have to understand that, you're getting an experience out of it. You're developing yourself as a player. Um, you can set expectations for yourself in terms of performance, but one, they need to be realistic expectations, and then two, just understand that this game is a hard game, and anything can happen. I mean, it's a dice math game. You might roll double ones at the worst possible time in a matchup, and that's not your fault at all. So it doesn't mean that your trip is automatically worthless. You know, you
mhm,
still go, you still meet new people, you still learn something about yourself, and you learn something about the game, and you develop as a player.
right. Yeah, I mean, I think I spent 3-4 years like traveling, mind you, not as intensely as I've come to like regularly travel, but like I spent like 3-4 years, before I started posting any results of material consequence. And it was really like, um it came in ebbs and waves, like of tempering expectations and reminding myself I'm here to have fun. And what really did rise up to meet me is, something that you talked about, which is like, the camaraderie and the making friends. Did you ever read Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone?
Haven't.
Super interesting. Well, it's about interesting ideas, but it's a dry sociology book, which puts it up there in like world class dryness. But it's about a very interesting subject matter, which is the diminution of civic participation in the United States, particularly decreasing number of friends, participation in voluntary associations, community groups, etc. And he talks about a bunch of factors that go into it, but you know, like maintaining a vibrant community and a vibrant social circle for yourself and for your hobby interest group is not something that takes, like it takes essentially constant renewal and constant participation.
Hmm.
One of the things we're losing in increasingly digitized ages, and what makes coming together for an event like a convention or a big tournament or something like that especially important, is it snaps us out of our cocoons and brings us to the third places where most of
Hmm.
life really happens, i.e. a place that is not work or home.
Work or home. Yeah, exactly.
And one, like, if you're having fun playing this game and you're having fun competing at playing this game, like, it really is an opportunity to grow a third place and essentially to have like a third place, wherever you go in the country.
Mhm.
I know uh I have been on trips, to all sorts of different parts of this country to see friends I met playing War Machine, where War Machine was maybe even like entirely tangential to the thing, if it was happening at all.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but it's like you know, it's a restoration or maybe not restoration, but it is pushing forward something that's important to us as human beings. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm. Absolutely.
Ugh. Yeah. Um and then obviously, all the the practice and the other stuff is great. There is a coming together too of like um tempering expectations. Like if you're traveling solo, like if you don't necessarily know anybody who's interested in the competitive thing like with you locally, um and you're not necessarily like an extrovert's extrovert, like it may be a challenge at first to meet people, but like like just like tempering your expectations for results placement, like you trust me, show up at enough of these things, you will get in the groove of things, you will recognize people, you'll make friends. That said, there is nothing like getting your local community hyped and traveling with a war band.
Yeah, it's fun. It's very fun.
Yeah, yeah, warband travel is awesome. I definitely that was one of the things that made me sad about COVID era metagame collapse of the Bay Area is I lost most of my travel buddies.
Yeah, they're crawling back.
Yeah, crawling back. Yeah, I can't wait to see I can't wait to see. Jay Beatnik says, "Look for Nate and Mark." Oh, yeah, Nate Magnan and Mark Taylor. Yeah, I'm excited to see those guys coming out. Yeah, the man, yeah, I can't wait to go back to the classic, and see who's coming back to the game,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
especially in that part of the world. So that's that's a lot of the why. And I guess the next one is how. So how do you approach planning your personal tournament year? And I mean, I guess I should say, like, you've probably got a more like the commit for you is probably a bit more challenging than for most because of work, and like, if anybody doesn't know, like, you're a married family man, loads of kids. Like, how do you look at blocking out your year?
Um, Usually I identify one or two larger events that I need to plan for, and by plan for I mean I need to make sure I get the vacation time off. I need to make sure that there's nothing else going on in those windows that I'm already committed to, like, a birthday or an anniversary or something like that. Which is, not insignificant, but there's usually one or two big cons that I identify early, and by early, I mean like I've already been thinking about it for, October, November, December of the year
Mhm.
ahead. And then sort of build my schedule around that. So, um, if I identify the big cons that I know I'm going to travel to, then I can fill in a few more regional events in the spaces in between, and then from there fill in with weekend local steamrollers as much as I can, as much as is tolerable.
Right. Yeah. So you're sort of starting with like the tent poles. So this would be like your big, you're going to be out for like a couple of days. So this is like your Adepticons, your Boca Brawls, your Las Vegas Opens,
Yeah,
where.
exactly. Anything that requires a flight from the West Coast for me is it requires some vacation time off, which I have to just for my work. I just have to draft well in advance. So it's
Mhm,
a little bit harder for me to make last minute trips in that way. So I really have to plan the big travel ones well in advance.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, well, and that's too where like, if people are looking at the circuit, for the first time, like, these regional events, like if you're really trying to make a go for the Iron Gauntlet or something like that, like the regional events slot great into your year because you don't have to like typically make dedicated like PTO plans and flights and hotels and all this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
like you go up to Portland for like 1 maybe 2 days, like you fly out Friday night after work and come back Sunday night, or something like that. Like they slot in great, and they really keep you in fighting shape
Hmm.
and playing a top quality game, and they're
Yeah.
very easy to add spontaneously to one's
Yeah.
schedule.
Yeah, those are definitely the kind that I'll do on a whim if something comes up, and it's usually somebody who's planning to attend one of those events will poke me and say, "Hey, you going to this?"
Hmm. Hmm.
And if they draw my attention to it, and this is again another benefit from expanding your net of contacts in the game, you start to get poked a lot by people. Hey, are you coming out to this? Am I going to see you at this? And then um, if it's close enough, again, then it's a little bit easier to, you know, pull the trigger on it.
Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah, and usually, like, if it involves a long layover, it might transcend like regional events. But yeah, usually you look at, if you're flying like almost quick commuter flight type thing. Carpooling. You guys in Southern California, at least based on last year, seem to have built up some recurring qualifiers and events, like interconnected between like Inland Empire, Los Angeles, San Diego.
Yeah,
um
so yeah, we're really trying to bolster that up right now. We've got three, maybe four locations across Southern California right now that can accommodate 16 to 20 players. And between the four or five local metas that we have a handful of players that are willing to travel to each of those locations. So
mhm.
with enough advanced planning and communication on our Discord, we can publish those events well in advance of their day, 6 to 8 weeks ahead of time, a lot of the time. Um, get people hyped to go to those things and then get a good turnout. And part of traveling to those things that we as the San Diego group love to do is we all ride together in the Warma bus, and we share our war tales, and talk about the current state of the game, and what we think our good and bad matchups are, and how we think the game is changing over time. And that's an incredibly enjoyable experience. And it goes hand in hand with the steamroller event, um of the day. You get to, on the way back, you talk about the games you had that day as well when they're fresh in your mind. So it really reinforces the camaraderie and the information processing analysis part of the day as well.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, like like usually a lot of the best list dojoing you'll do will happen in a car on the way back from a tournament.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um yeah. Gosh, I'm trying to think if we're missing any tiers of events here. So like, for me the way I usually block it out is you know, I think I do pretty similar identifying essentially the ones that will be the biggest pains in the ass and pick how many pains in the ass am I going to have this year.
Yeah,
Not the
that's sort of that's kind of how I'm thinking about it too. Yeah.
Yeah, not that the events are bad by any stretch of the imagination, but like we were both griping in the pre-show, like Milwaukee is expensive and inconvenient to get to. I'm not thrilled about this.
But it's a great event, so we're gonna go.
No, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Adepticon's gonna kick ass. But I am a little worried about it because I'm not entirely locked in on what faction I'm playing this year.
Hmm.
And that's gonna, like, I basically only paint for like the Iron
Yeah.
Gauntlet and
Yeah.
and the WTC. Like otherwise, like, man, ain't nobody got time for that. Adepticon is gonna make me paint a lot faster. So that's, oh hey, we're gonna have Jeff at Adepticon. Holy crap.
Nice. We'll see you there. Yeah, I'm probably gonna play something that I already have painted because yeah, it takes a long time.
I'm one listing Firequill. So I am quite excited for Firequill and for a Firequill rework. I think the metagame is moving more in his direction than ever before. Does that mean I'm without reservation all aboard the Firequill train? We'll see. I mean, like I'm honestly excited for Gravediggers. I'm excited for Storm Legion. Like, you know, I'm excited for Brian Bloods, and dare I say it, I might even be excited for Winter Core. Like, which is like one of those phrases that after the first year or two of Mark IV is like, oh, I never thought I'd be saying that. Let's see. What's the most represented faction in Mark IV? I'm playing Chimera, but would prefer to play my true love Scorn.
You said Scork.
Scork. True love Scork.
Scorn. I miss Scorn. My true love as
Yeah, me
well.
too.
Yeah, maybe
Uh
soon. Not
Brian,
soon.
well, here's the thing. If you miss Scorn and you miss like Annihilators and a bunch, like a big passel of Titans, Brine Blood Marauders is the faction for you. In terms of game feel, they look like trolls, and I often describe it as like it plays like Talion Charter with Scorn Warbeasts, like super
Hmm.
killy synergistic infantry, which very much like Annihilators, backed up by Warbeasts that are functionally Titans.
Hmm.
Um, the faction feels awesome to play. Stephen Williams, it's going to be a very different game in 8 days. It's going to feel very different in ways that like I don't think many of us are expecting it to. Like that lethality changes a lot of underlying math.
Yeah, it's
Um
going to be interesting. I think I'm excited to see the full drop here in a little bit, but I'm excited.
mhm. uh yeah, man. Yeah, it's gonna. So what is on your currently painted docket? You have Gravediggers, you have Chimera.
My Gravediggers is not really painted at all. I do have it. Um, I have Chimera and Crucible Guards fully painted. A lot of
Oh
other
yeah,
stuff
they're
I would,
good again.
yeah, a lot of other things that I was considering playing, I would have to put a lot of paint work into as well, though.
Right. Yeah, which
I'm
is
I'm I'm probably on Shadow Flame Shard again for the next year though,
mhm,
based on what's been kind of rolling out. So
mhm. So given that, we both sort of block the competitive year into like, and I think most people do at this point, into like a season that runs, with like, okay, New Year's has happened, Christmas break has happened, the update drops, toward the tail end of January, and then the events start to pick up again, and we're off to the races, and we're racing for the end of the year, some practicing for WTC, and most circuit regulars trying to get into the Iron Gauntlet and their regional finals. um I think a lot of us settle into thinking of the circuit like a season, and then we close up with WTC and the Iron Gauntlet, and that's it, folks. End of the season, off for the holidays.
Mhm.
Um, how how often, if ever, do you find yourself changing factions mid-season?
Um, I I tend to play one faction for a season as my primary faction that I'm playing competitively, and then I will dabble in other things that I have. I have a lot of faction ADD in that I love I love the game and the miniatures, so I acquire a lot of it, and I will dabble in other lists, and I usually will play a game or two here and there just to satisfy that urge to constantly swap, and then go back
Right.
to grinding the games with my primary faction.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I'm I'm usually the same, except like one thing I will say about like WTC, you are applying for WTC this year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank goodness. Good, 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 good. Um so what you said about like not applying in 2020, I think is generally a smart move, at least in my experience. Because it was like 2017 year off, 2019 felt like a great rhythm to me.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
you know WTC came back in 2022, and I did that, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to take 23 off. And then one of my 22 teammates, Cody, hits me up and he's like, we want I want you on the team this year. I'm like, oh no. And I said yes. And then I'm like, okay, 2024 definitely break year. And it was like travel companions, like friends that I'd made it past WTCs, like, you're coming out for our vacation next year, right? I'm like, I guess I am. Like, 3 years in a row
Yeah.
is exhausting.
Yeah. It's a lot.
And but I knew I wanted to keep running with Brine Bloods after the 24 season, but I just got bored with them. Like, bored to tears. And everyone who's watched this show has probably heard me talk about how, like, this is changing soon, but every caster is just an inferior version of Shadow Tongue and Boom Howler, and like, you get sick of playing the same two casters over and over.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I remember we had that same discussion, I think, at the SoCal Open at the end of 24, when you were just sort of at your limits to what you had explored in the faction, and we're ready for something else.
yeah, yeah. So I wound up like, I just need to play something else. I wound up doing Storm Legion for the first half of
Hmm.
this year, switching back to Brian's later. I needed the palette cleanse. Generally, I don't recommend doing that though. Like, unless the metagame really changes or there's a new faction that's like really awesome and really right up your alley, potentially looking at you, Kithgard. You know, generally it's in terms of like posting your best results possible. It's usually best to stick by your guns for a full season in my experience. Like, I used to have a reputation for like being a dedicated faction specialist, like Cosmo's all scoring all the time. I look back at my WTC history recently, and I realized I've never played the same faction twice at WTC. Like, from the Europeans' perspective, I just look like an inveterate faction hopper. Um So looking at Shadow Flame, obviously, like partially because they're fully painted, but what do you make of the prospects of that faction going into this year?
Um, I'm really excited to see where each of the casters ends up with the spell rack going away. You know,
Hmm.
I was initially really concerned about that change because I felt that the spell rack, at least at its base concept, was a very intriguing idea. It's part of the reason that I came back to the game. I took a little break um, right around the Mark IV launch time,
Hmm.
and then came back and was intrigued by the spell rack, at least in part, and having that sort of variable toolkit to bring to every matchup. But
Hmm.
I think, you know, as you mentioned, you know, the same is true of the Brine Blood stable, is that they all became inferior versions of the two that utilize the rack the best, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The
So
spell rack has a homogenizing effect on your caster stable.
yeah, and it almost you know, Shadow Flame, I would say, didn't have the best rack options of
Hmm.
all of the Mark IV factions to begin with, but you still sort of felt pigeonholed into most matchups. You know, I'm going to take my Silence of Death and my Dragon's Blood, and you know, very occasionally I would take spell X, Y, or Z if I really, really needed it.
Hmm.
Um, I'm excited to see each of those casters kind of develop into their own unique niche and explore new pairings to see, you know, both in the landscape of the game as it changes, you know, a week from now, and with these reworked casters. So, you know, I'm excited to put Valix on the table. I haven't actually I haven't played that caster yet.
Yeah.
He's the last Shadow Flame Shard model I have to paint, and he's on my painting table right now, and I think he's going to get some playtime right out the gate. So I'm
Hmm.
excited to find a new pair to play that wasn't what I had just been cranking games with for the last 6 months. You know.
Right. Yeah. 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 I mean, that's going to be one of the great things about the mix up is like injecting a lot of variety into factions that, like, if you are doing the same faction year over year, like, may start to feel a little staid,
Hmm.
especially as, like, like optimality started to emerge. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think of Lilith, by the way?
She's the other one that I'm gonna be. She's gonna be the pair to start at least.
Valix
Wait,
Lilith, just see which one
yeah,
doesn't stick.
yeah. I think Shyrus's kit is incredibly intriguing still, and she's gonna be a very strong caster. I just want to try some of these other ones.
Hmm.
Get some rep there to see how they do. Yeah, I think she'll be very good. I'm interested still to see where, you know, Kyrax and Rassic end up. I don't think we've heard anything about their kits, how they might have changed yet, but I'm excited to see where things end up. I think Lilith looks very good.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, she was interesting because she was always a caster that was like almost there,
Hmm.
like enough to be compelling, but like, sometimes felt like little something more, please.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, making her guns better. You know, like I talked about with David from Tucson, just having a caster with a high attack value and the ability to make a fair number of attacks from a secure position on the board, like, is probably going to appreciate substantially. Slipstream's an awesome spell.
Yeah,
Silence of Death is
absolutely,
awesome. uh
absolutely.
uh
I don't know how often she's going to cast Knight's Reflection, but it could be
that
potentially
that
backbreaking, as you
that
know, as
that seems
a
pretty corner case, but
yeah.
boy does it suck to get hit by that spell.
Yeah, you're a Morgul 3 player, you remember that. He
Hmm.
could cast it 4 times in the turn, though?
Oh
Something
yeah,
like that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
She
think,
won't be doing that, but
yeah, no. Not enough spell slave, not enough
Yeah.
not enough dice fixing personally to just be like, and you're blind and you're blind and you're blind.
Yeah, but I think a lot of my my early reps with her were, do I get full value out of the bow or do I try to support my army? And I think now she can do both
Hmm.
effectively. And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I think that change alone, and then getting Silence of Death. Silence of Death was by far my most commonly racked spell. So
Hmm.
if it found a home with her, then she's going to have a place in the army for sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned that it'll be interesting to see where the because you did have, you often had like your stock standard rack spells, and they would often be defining of your either your defensive profiles or your damage profiles. It's I haven't heard too many people talk about this, but like you may see the all like more than just the mat rat hits, like you may see some factions surprisingly emerge as pillow fisted coming out of
Yeah,
January, or certainly
a-
like
absolutely.
hitting at a par far less than you would expect, based
Yeah,
on based on historical.
it seems like most of the caster reworks that have been fully published so far have included some sort of hit fixing or damage fixing in
Hmm.
their revised spell lists, which is good to see. But yeah, I think some factions are going to get more durable in ways that we didn't really expect, for
Hmm.
sure. Whether that's on the defensive side or the armor side, but you know, not everybody has their old reliable damage fixing ready to go. So
Right.
we're gonna have to look for new tools again.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Or it may wind up being like, oh, we've got to drive for old tools. You know who never struggled killing things? The Wyvern.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Stock goes up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. Yeah, I wonder if we're gonna see um a renaissance of good stuffs lists.
Hmm.
I mean, which is a weird thing to say because I feel like a lot of Chimera lists over the last portion of the year have sort of emerged as like Chimera All Stars. Like, here's my lineup of my favorite toys.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and that's another thing to think about too. Like with the seasonal nature of the circuit. I forget who was talking to me about this. I think it might have been a Cody mention. I'm so sorry if you're listening, whoever it was, and I'm struggling with attribution, but like, like the first 3 months of the season or so are like the wild experimentation phase. And then you go through you like wild experimentation stuff is going to be crazy. Uh the point was made also that you are probably going to see over the first 3 months smaller armies that are composed of more elite models.
Mm.
You can definitely get ahead of that trend by bringing large business armies right out of the gate. You will probably flummox a lot of people. The next phase is the sort of the shape of the metagame starts to emerge. Like the top dogs start coming out in like May through like July. And then the last 3 months are, where you really start consolidating and optimizing, and things become like solved, as it were. Um, oh, oh my God, I'm so burpy tonight. It's
That damn
so
Chipotle.
bad. Yeah, never Chipotle before podcast.
Yeah, I think this update will be particularly interesting just because the spell rack change means that every single caster has been reworked, right? There aren't nearly as many factions that got minor tweaks. I feel like every single army is going to have massive changes that are difficult to predict and are going to take lots of time to settle out.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, man, the prove out period is going to be volatile, and I mean, I think this is probably going to be the biggest change since since what year was it? SR20, yeah, SR24, the SR24-25 paradigm. I think this, this January update is probably going to be like a similar impact to SR24 dropping, where like it changed the face of the game. Like,
This was the no more zones to stand in, and
yeah,
you have to win by 3 at the end of your opponent's turn. Those
yep,
were major paradigm changes for the scenario packet.
yeah. No more circles, or yeah, no more circles and rectangles. You're now, different base sizes. It really changed the dynamic of the game. It really changed army composition, and it was almost like these last 2 years of operating inside that 24-25 paradigm. Like flank play got a lot more important, like skirmishing got a lot more important, driving flank collapse.
An
Uh,
independent flank, absolutely.
Yep. Having massive operational redundancy in your army became important, and it really did take the full, 2 years for, uh, you know, okay, very strong defensive abilities to become like to emerge as game defining on the second season. You know,
Hmm.
like where Zadaroth and casters like that like really emerged as dominant.
Hmm.
So it's possible that, you know this cycle may all still be like that early sussing out period as things change, and 2027 will be as like we start to hit our stride with that major paradigm shift.
Hmm.
uh yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're running on we're running on time, and we've covered pretty much most of the outline. Any last words of wisdom, either for, from your experience in and around the WTC, to your advice to aspirants, to your advice to aspirants to the circuit. Any closing thoughts for us here?
I think uh, if you're thinking about applying at all, just do it. Open the application, read it. If after you've done reading it, you think, I don't think I should apply, that's fine, but at least now you have an understanding of what the application process is like. Um, or just fill it out and submit it.
Mhm.
The worst case scenario is that you don't get picked to go to WTC. Nobody's going to call you up and say, "How I can't believe you submitted this application in this state." No one is going to say that. So just get your name on one, get your name out there, start talking to people, um, and take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're looking and you're not sure that you're going to make the cut this year, but you want to keep piling for next year, I am guilty of not doing this, by the way. Track your games.
Yeah.
Track what you attended, and just give the record for your, like, keep a record of your games for yourself, so that you know where to build. Like, I think it was back in 20 something. I think it was 2018 actually. I was doing I did not do this in 2024, and I've had to like check my flight logs, like what events did I go to that year, like ask Luke Rowan, like, hey, do you still have the points logs from Cascadia that year? But yeah, record your games. Like 2018, I was going prepping for the I5 team tournament. I was playing Protectorate, logged a bunch of games, and I realized, that one scenario with like the rectangles that are offset like this, and then the circle in the
Mm.
middle, and the flags
Mhm.
that are offset the
Mhm.
other way.
Mhm.
I forget what that one was called, but I looked at it and I realized, I've literally never won this scenario playing
Oh, no.
Protectorate. I should probably warn my team about
Uh,
this.
that's
I think my
hilarious.
faction is just too slow to play this.
Yeah, I really like that scenario. What was the name of that scenario? I
Man.
can't remember. That was a good one, though. I like that
Yeah,
one.
it was a good one. Not if you're playing Protectorate.
No, too slow. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
funny. It's funny that you mentioned that. It's like I've already forgotten some of the things I went to last year for sure.
oh,
And
I know, me too, right?
I should just I should do a better job of actually having some sort of record keeping. But Longshanks is actually pretty good for that, just because most of these qualifier events, if not all of them, I believe utilize Longshanks. So you have your attendance history there, so you can at least check that.
They dump the logs year over year.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, that's why my 2024 is so hard to reconstruct. Like
Yeah.
at the end of a circuit year, like if you're keeping a resume or you're keeping a game log, like go in and just capture that real quick. Otherwise, it's gonna vanish into the ether unless you specifically have the exact URL for the event you went to.
Oh wow. Okay. I didn't know that. That's good to know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Go and grab that while you
Yeah.
can.
I'm gonna go write it all down now. So
All right. Well, Eric, it's been awesome having you
yeah.
on. Keith,
Thanks.
take us away.